Welcome, welcome, welcome. All right. Coming off a big victory in our first SEC game of the season so far, taking down the number 16 undefeated LSU Tigers with a 15-point victory. Man, what a start. I laughed. I cried. It's SEC basketball, baby. We're back. Matt, who's your MVP?
So glad it's here. We hyped this up. It lived up to everything we talked about. Unbelievable game. MVP is none other than Walker Kessler. We had so many questions about him a month ago, and to see him play this well against a team as athletic and big as LSU was just phenomenal. He and Jabari led the team in scoring 16 points. Walker only took 8 shots to get 16 points, 3 of 4 at the free throw line, hit his only 3, 9 rebounds, and an unbelievable 11 blocks. 11.
Suck it, North Carolina fans. They've been checking in on all the box scores and saying little sassy things. Their only thing they have left is that he's still not shooting great from 3. Well, tonight he was 100%, and it was in a moment that really mattered. So suck it, North Carolina fans.
He had the team's highest plus minus at plus 19 when he's on the floor. I think you could tell there was a clear difference. He played almost 30 minutes, which we've talked about how valuable that is. He only had 3 fouls, and LSU was going downhill all day at him, and he just kept turning them away. This was by far, in my opinion, his best performance when you consider, opponent, situation. And this game was like up and down and just so helter-skelter. And for a guy that big to be able to just be on the floor the whole time and thrive in it. And he carried us on offense early in the game. He hit a turnaround fadeaway. He hit a 3. Yeah. He hit his free throws. He did everything. This was the easiest MVP we've had in a while.
Yeah, for a minute there, it was going to be tight. Maybe like midway through the second, it was still tight. But, man, he went out there and just kept collecting blocks like crazy. It became his game at the end. Had a great alley-oop. He finished in there. You're right, that turnaround jump shot was super sweet. The 3 was a big deal. All these things were like multipliers because it's getting to a point where a double-double is starting to get normal for him. I don't know what the actual statistic is. I know they were showing some interesting stats on there, but his double-doubles are like 10 points, 10 rebounds or whatever. But when he's getting 11 blocks, 9 rebounds on top of that, and then he's doing something like hitting a 3 and doing things like hitting a jump shot and running up and down the court for 30 minutes. It's not just the blocks too, 11 blocks, but he alters every shot. They're scared to death to go down there on them. Every time he goes down there, it's a block. It's a huge difference. As much as I like Cardwell, it's such a huge difference when it's in and out. Like Cardwell is just trying his best down there, but man, that's when they went on their huge run too. And we'll have to go through maybe not the whole game script because it was a 15-point victory, but it was wild out there. It was wild. It was slippery. The refs were doing their craziness. The players were doing their craziness. It was really like a huge welcome to the SEC play and how it's just going to be. It's going to be rough. You can win a game by 15, and it's going to feel like a heart attack the entire game.
How good. Let's just talk about the intensity of this game as a first conference game. You knew it was hyped up. Unbelievable crowd. I've watched so many sports in my life. It takes something really special for me to get chills watching something. The first 5 to 10 minutes of that game where Auburn started on an 18-1 run, which, by the way, this is going to be this generation's Ole Miss game from that amazing 1999 team. They're going to show clips of tonight's game with.
I don't know. It was a rough 18-1 too, though. That Ole Miss, when they went off, it was like they were dunking and hitting everything. It was 18-1 like that. For this one, it was a rough 18-1. It was LSU bricking some bad threes and us turning the ball over some still.
Okay, maybe we watched different things. To me, the energy, the up-tempo, the crowd was completely played such a huge role in that game. And honestly, the energy level was so high, it was not sustainable. And you saw kind of the drop down. But still, unbelievable job by the crowd. Terrific environment. This team, and I think everybody just know, we talked a couple weeks ago, this team is special. And I think the Auburn community, showed out and knows it every time they play at home. I hope to see something similar to that because that is not fun to play in. And Will Wade said last week what he said about how difficult of an environment is. He's still never won there. So glad we got that. Michael Floyd, who was on the podcast, way to hold down the fort in the jungle. Great job.
Yeah, shout out. We're starting to have guests on. I saw him on TV. So shout out, Michael, if you're listening in, and anybody else, students, everybody, we love you. Two things about that. You said you got chills and the fans. The big thing with the fans, man, wild environment. Loved it. It was like the sound ESPN was doing was perfect. Sometimes they like do the sound mixing a little weird with ESPN. Perfect. Like the crowd was in it for every single play. It was either crazy amount of booing or crazy amount of cheering. There was no moments where it was just like, okay, that happened. No, the crowd was letting you know how they felt about every little thing in that game, for right or for wrong. You love it. I want them to start doing, I sent this to Michael. I'm going to put it on Instagram. I sent it to Matt. We have to start doing Ks, like strikeouts for Walker Kessler. In baseball, when a pitcher throws a strike, like a strikeout, they put a K down in the stadium, and you kind of look up for some of these great games where pitchers have 20 strikeouts or something, you see 20 Ks across the outfield, and you're like, that's so cool. With 11 blocks, can you imagine if we had like enough of those to be up there somewhere in the state? We had 11 Bs on the stadium. ESPN could zoom in on all the Bs and how crazy it is that Walker Kessler's like collecting all of these basically. And then the other thing was, yeah.
Go ahead.
And the other thing was the chills. So one, the fans were amazing. So good job. The chill moment I had, you had chills at the beginning of the game. My chill moment was at the very end of the first half. Jabari went down there and hit a jumper with 7 seconds. He got the ball right in the out of bounds, dribbled all the way down there and hit a jumper with 0 seconds left on the clock. And I said, this is the future. I'm seeing March Madness in front of me. This is the kind of stuff that Jabari, like, we're on the line, tied up game. Jabari drives down there, Sweet 16 on the line, hits the jumper. That's the future. These are the kind of moments you want them to have so that in March they're ready for it.
Totally agree. Love the block idea. You could do that. You know, the student section backs up to a railing where there's kind of a separation. You could do it in the student section in one of the aisleways, like at midcourt or something. You could do it hanging over from the upper deck. You could do a lot of different things. If that happens, we're going to take credit for it. So somebody make that happen. Let's go.
We know the people in the student section now. We can talk to some people in the stadium. So
let's talk a little bit. You mentioned Jabari. Great moment there. There were a few points in this game. Auburn went up 18-1 early. They actually had 3 different 17-point leads in this game, but in between, LSU made their runs, as good teams are going to do. They settled in. They made you uncomfortable. Jabari, at the end of the first half, I thought that was maybe the biggest stretch of the game. I think Auburn was only up 4 or 6 or something like that with a couple of minutes left, and Auburn got it to 11 at halftime, and Jabari just hit shots. And the great part about that last play, he was out of control. Even if he had finished, I assume you were going to have Jabari as close for the MVP if Walker hadn't just decimated it there at the end. I would not have. I thought he made a ton of mistakes. I thought he looked uncomfortable in the open court at times. He had 4 turnovers at really inopportune times. He fell asleep on out of bounds plays, giving up threes. He's still developing. He's the youngest kid on this team. But that last stretch, and you saw other flashes of it, that talent and that potential is just dripping off of him. And he's still, again, maybe not his best game, 16 points to lead the team along with Walker. So he's amazing.
We're holding him to a really high standard. You know, we always start comparing him to other guys that have that NBA potential, which we only had so many in the program history in the last like 10 years, 20 years even. So we hold him, we kind of talk about Kiki and Okoro a lot because those are our comparisons we have, even if they're not great comparisons. But if one of those put up a game like this early in SEC play in their freshman year, we'd be going nuts.
He's ahead of them.
Yeah, he's ahead of them. About how great they were. Oh my God, they're really coming on. Oh, Kiki, look at him go, 16 points. Block, a couple rebounds, just had some great shots there. But because we hold Jabari Smith to such a high standard, we want to see him go past that. We're going to pick on these little things or whatever. Yeah, a big thing.
Did you think he looked comfortable? Did you think he looked comfortable tonight?
Not really. A big thing with Jabari right now, I don't know if he's relying on athleticism necessarily. He's got these just amazing talent to hit these jump shots and these threes that no one else can seem to do. He hasn't taken that next step yet, but the announcers called it out in a game or two ago. He's a run stopper. It's huge, and he's been doing that a couple times. At this point, that's his move, is when everybody's struggling to get that shot because he's so talented and so much bigger than a lot of these guys. He just rises up and hits a three. He rises up and hits a jump shot. Not great shots, but they go in because he's that talented, and it's been huge for the team. You want him to take that next step to become like a true star because you can see him doing it. But right now, the last couple of games, his big move has been hitting shots when we need them to stop that run.
Totally agree. He is There's only one of him. He's a unicorn, probably in the sport as a whole this year. There's only one of that guy. And he is I love run stopper. I think that's exactly what he is. He can always get his shot. Thought he forced some today. But again, great thing for him who was playing high school last year, this jump in competition. I love, now that Auburn got the win, great to play a team like LSU at home to start out, just to set that intensity. The crowd was great. I thought the intensity and the effort between both teams was special. And I think those are two really good teams, and it showed, and they put on a show.
It felt like late season, didn't it? Can you believe that was the first game of the SEC? But that's how hyped up this game was and how much both teams felt like this was going to say if they were legit or not. Both teams, like LSU was undefeated against inferior opponents. Auburn played a really good UConn team and went to double overtime and lost. But everybody else on the list, there's a lot, you can say a lot about Net and Kim Pom and all that. We did play some good teams, but this was the first ranked, really big, put your stake in the ground. We're here, especially when, if you're watching the AP poll, which just doesn't really matter, but we were 13 and then we were 12, then we were 11. We just kept thinking we were jumping the top 10 and get that respect, and we couldn't get it. So guess what? We're going to get it now. If we go win on South Carolina on Saturday, we're going to be a top 10 team.
South Carolina is Tuesday. So next poll, there is no excuse for this to not be a top 10 team. That's absurd. Right. It was already absurd. Now it would be just comical if we're not in the top 10.
Yeah, you were talking about who our MVPs could have been. Walker really took it over down the stretch with the blocks and had a couple good scores too. There's a moment about halfway through the second where I say that they make this difficult sometimes with how good the team is, where there could have been one of three players that could have kept going or started up, and we could have picked somebody else, the other third one after Kessler and Jabari, because Jabari could have turned it on midway through the second half. He had a decent enough game, a baseline of a game, where if he hit another 3 or 2, went to collect some fouls, he could have taken over the MVP position. But instead, Walker was the one that kind of really started showing out down the stretch. The other one is Wendell Green. He's been playing so great recently. He's really taken over. He's got a lot of confidence. He's really bringing up the court really well. He's driving really well. There was a great play where their center or their biggest man was on him at some point during the game, and he just kind of brought him out further and further past the 3-point line and just looked up and said, "Nah, you too slow." Went right past him, did his little underneath the basket score. He did that twice this game. He's just playing super great. And if he had just hit one more 3 or one more drive and the other guys didn't play as well down the stretch, he would have been the MVP.
He's great, and I just love the flexibility there. He's taken that, he got benched, still playing a ton, but he got benched after 3 or 4 games. Now he is this terrific guy coming off the bench. Bruce really liked playing both him and Zepp together, both halves, for a good stretch in this game. And Wendell was the guy, Wendell was the better point guard tonight by far, and just way more explosive offensively than Zepp is at this point. And he played finishing minutes, the last 5 minutes of the game, which is really, when you want to be on the floor if you're a big time player. So he's getting those opportunities because of how well he's playing. And I love inserting him off the bench to start both halves, because he comes in like rocket fuel, to help out against players who have been playing for the last 3 or 4 or 5 minutes when he comes in. So I love it.
It almost might be that energy kind of thing where we can take it up to that next notch that most teams can't. Our starting lineup gets in there and brings this incredible energy for 5 minutes or so to begin each half. And then the other teams go, all right, now it's time to settle in. You either got stormed or you weathered the storm or you were the storm, and we do that for 5 minutes. Both teams can do that for 5 minutes. And then we send our backups in, and Wendell can go off. KD can go off. People we can have a good game with that. And I think that's could be a cushion of 5 points there. So that really makes a difference at the beginning of each half, that we get that extra 5 coming off our 5 minutes,
Well, he was good. Let's talk about the return of the Hamburglar, because he definitely came back. Good KD. Look, KD is who he is. We've talked about it too much. We won't maybe go on about it as much here, but I thought he looked like himself for the first time in a few weeks. He made 3 or 4 plays that were just terrific that only he could make. I don't even want to focus on the negatives. He left some guys open from 3. He made some mistakes, but overall, that's what we need. And in this kind of game where it was sloppy, if you don't get those 4 steals from KD, this is a close game down the stretch, in my opinion, because those were pivotal, possession-saving plays. And the best stat on him, in my opinion, he took 4 shots. He only took 4 shots, and he had such a massive impact on this game. He had 9 points. He got to the line a few times. He started making his free throws. He was plus 17 when he's on the floor. That's terrific. I thought he was really good tonight.
He brings a ton of energy. Strange guy. It's getting like at this point, I would have thought Bruce could kind of get in his head a little more and reel him back a little bit on some stuff. He had a really interesting one, hit a couple where he drove it all the way and you just wish he would have slowed down and passed the ball or just did. I think we've talked about it in the past podcast. I want him to develop a jump stop. You're running down the court. He just goes so fast. At this point, they've they've watched film on him. I think teams know if he's coming down the court, set up for a charge. And he collected one this game. And people just know he's not going to pass that ball. Do what you have to do on that one. And he had one that was really bad where he could have passed it to Walker Kessler easily. He even looked over his shoulder at him, I feel like, and he just decided to go all the way. Then he missed his 2 free throws after that, which was really brutal. But then I think immediately after that, he stole the ball again, did it again, and then made his free throws. And we were like, okay, that's KD, I guess, at this point. The other really strange one, he had his one of the great Hamburglar moments. That's another one I'd love to put a sound clip or something in there for the Hamburglar moments. He had another one where he had a great steal, went down there and dunked it. But the funniest part was that he went down there and dunked it, and then they had to clean up some sweat or something. And he was calling for the replay up on the board. And it's already bad enough that he does a good play. And then he goes nuts. He turns into Super Saiyan and he's not paying attention where he needs to be. And he gets down there and there's a specific one I remember where he got down there and he was underneath the goal. And I was like, do you know where you're supposed to be right now, Katie? That can't be where you're supposed to be right now. At this point, was it 13 games into the season? Yeah, 13 games, I believe. He can't be still doing that. He hits a 3, goes nuts like he just won the game and completely loses where he's at in the court. And it's okay, I love the energy, but you got do a flex and then immediately get down there. Don't do a flex, then a spin around, then a yell, then a look for the replay. Come on.
Well, I'll defend him on the replay thing, and then I'll roast him on a couple others. The replay, there was a bad call right after that, before that caused that dead ball. He wanted them to look at it. They couldn't because of the rules. He wanted them to check the monitor because should have been our ball, and it wasn't. That's what I think it was. But I also have to point out, look, Bruce knows what he's doing. But I would imagine this is one of the stronger personalities he's ever had. The last 2 minutes of this game, it doesn't matter. Auburn won by 15. I'm only going to spend 15 seconds on this. But our refusal to just run clock and give the ball to Wendell and quit. He looked at Bruce Pearl, and he literally did the opposite of what Bruce wanted. And he just went to the basket and got fouled. And we needed.
That's 15 seconds.
I'm done. But you know what? Did you see that? You know
no,
what I mean?
I know what you're talking about. Sorry. For the YouTube people, I'm trying to give you a little more visuals here. I was counting down my fingers to give him 15 seconds on it. Yeah, he did that 2 or 3 games ago where he shot a contested 3 when clearly
the game winner
had come out and said, do not shoot that contested 3. In this game, he did another one where he shot a 3 at the end of that 2-minute or 1-minute offense where he just wanted to slow it down, and he just went and shot that 3 anyways.
There was that possession, and then the next possession, Wendell's right there to just throw the ball back, and Bruce is he's right behind him where the play was. He just darted to the basket. He got a foul. I think he hit his free throw.
Is it the one where he slipped?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was close. That could have been just a slip and no foul call, and that changes some stuff. And I know you're right, we're up 15, but it's the things that you want them to know now. So when it's closer, they it's like muscle memory not to do something like that.
And by the way, it happened. I don't know who. Do you remember who? There was another possession at the end where we had, I think it was Wendell, had a fast break, and he tried to do an alley-oop to Alan Flanagan that worked, but it's a charge. And we could have just run the clock out. It's great. But if you get hurt on a play like that, or if you get somebody hurt, it's bad. So we need to clean that up. We haven't been in those situations a ton because the games have been blowouts a lot lately. There will be a ton to learn from. Anyway, that was way too much on that.
It's a big balancing act, right? Of wanting them to play so fast and the Harlem Globetrotters and really taking advantage of every turnover possible while also being but don't collect charges, pass the ball when you're right. It's hard to have that balance line where it says attack, but do it responsibly.
But look, if you've watched enough college basketball, you know it's basically a race to the last 4 minutes. And if you can be up by a comfortable amount, at that point, you just have to not mess up. You just have to know. So I think getting that experience is really good, and it wasn't a super close game, so we could get away with it. And I don't think they would have made some of those decisions if it had been a 5-point game. but still, I just wanted to point it out. KD was great, though. I want to point out, I really think he was really good. If he can play more like that, that is just massive for this team moving forward.
All right, we've gotten this far into the podcast without talking about the return of the king, Alan Flanagan, starting role again. Part of that, well, I think we should get into that later in the podcast, but Cambridge went out with COVID. And so we talked about starting, Cambridge came in with some Omicron or whatever. And so we're not sure if Flanagan would have started or not in this game. I think the plan was to probably bring him off the bench and play a little less minutes for Flanagan. I don't know if you have the minutes pulled up right
29.
now.
He played a full load of minutes.
No way they meant for him to play that many minutes. So that's the whole thing. But anyways, Flanagan's back. We'll talk about COVID after this. 10 points. You said 29 minutes for him. 6 rebounds. 3 turnovers. How many blocks?
3 steals. 3 steals. I thought he was great defensively.
Yeah, you said you got a lot to talk about Flanagan. You were texting about it. What did you think about Flanagan?
Thought he was terrific. Shout out to me. I called that he would start when Jackson broke the news. When Jackson calls me, it's always bad. It's always bad. It's something that's just happened. And I was like, oh no, is the game canceled? What's going on? Just Cambridge out. And y'all, if you could have heard Jackson on that conversation, he thought Cambridge being out was about to just derail this team in the SEC opener. I encouraged him that it was going to be okay.
You called him starting, and so did Caleb Williams, Jerome McClendon, Connor Feemster, Grayson, KD Johnson Stan account, also known as WDE Daily, JP Parker, Ryan Tapley, Caden Barrett, and Jamie Plunkett. You all said yes to if he's going to start or not. Who was the no? The only no was me. And that was just so it made the poll look like it wasn't just one person responding to it. Good job, Instagram people.
Well, it's an easy move. It's a great opportunity. It probably means Flanagan gets that spot now. But I just think it's a tremendous, again, we've talked about the depth over and over, but just we had 10 guys play in this game against LSU tonight, and not one of them didn't belong on the court, and you're missing a starter, for the first 12 games. It's just an embarrassment of riches. Flanagan, though, to be specific, great to see him hit a three-pointer, great to see him attack the rim and get fouled and come down hard and be fine. Great to see him play awesome defensively. He had 3 assists. He led the team in assists, I believe. No, he didn't. Wendell did. He had 1 assist. Sorry. I just thought he played. I wanted to point out KD. That's what I wanted to do. KD made some great passes. Shout out to KD. Flanagan, though, to me, you talked about him being a guy you can give the ball to when things are going bad. I think you saw that at times in this game. He's still knocking some rust off, but I do want to point out, I'm going to bring Xavier Pinson into this. We talked about him in the SEC preview, transfer from Missouri, super experienced. He almost single-handedly got LSU back in this game, and there were 2 plays. I'll talk about the second one.
There was a stretch where he was unstoppable. He would get the ball in his hand and drive it. It was like no one could get in front of him. I don't know what was going on. He got a foul call every time. It was brutal.
Well, let's talk about the 3 fouls. He had 2 fouls at halftime. He got in foul trouble. He had to sit in the first half, which helped us. In the second half, the 3rd foul was when he kicked his legs out, and they made a great call in the corner, which you mentioned.
Shout out to the refs. They do not call that very often. He flopped, kicked his legs out. Usually they just kind of let that be and just don't call the foul. They called the offensive foul on that, and good for them. They should call that more often.
The 4th foul, he had 3 fouls. Kessler has 3 fouls. Kessler had just picked up his 3rd with like 9 or 10 minutes left. He was about to sub out, but he was still on the floor. He got isolated with Pinson, which you're like, oh no, he's going to drive right at him. Chris Moore, the guy who just I'm telling you, as a former lower level basketball coach, he does so many things. He slides over and is just there for Pinson. He takes the charge. So not only does Kessler not get his 4th foul, Pinson does. He has to sit, and then he comes back in, and this is where Flanagan comes in. They're inbounding the ball, and the guy tries to throw it at Flanagan's legs it was about to get a 5-second call. Flanagan does a brilliant job of kind of getting away from that, gets the ball, passes it in transition. It goes to Jabari eventually for a 3. He misses. Flanagan's on the other end of the floor, 94 feet, tips the ball, keeps it alive for Kessler, who gets fouled on an and-1. And that was one of the biggest plays in the game.
That was probably the biggest thing. Like, really, Pinson felt like was unstoppable in that time. I don't know if it was because he was guarding or just he's that good of a player, but he's unstoppable. They brought the lead down to, we went up to 15-point leads, 17-point leads. I think 17 was the highest we got, but we did that a couple times. And Xavier just brought him all the way back to maybe a 6-point lead for Auburn. And it really felt like this was a turning point in the game. And so then they had that charge that took them out for a large period of time where we built up a lead again. They finally said, okay, we can't, like, basically the announcer, everybody was saying, like, all right, there's probably like 5 or 6 minutes left in the game, but how long can you go for when you're down 6, 7, 8, 9, 10? Even if he's got 4 fouls, you got to put him back in when he's dominating that hard. They put him back in. I don't even know if he was in for 30 seconds and picked up his 5th foul. And that was huge. It was already big enough that Walker went up there and got what I consider the way he should be getting threes. He made an actual 3, but 3-point plays is really where he needs to make his bones down there. And he got that. And that was already a huge moment. And then you hear the announcer say, and it's on Pinson. And it was like, that's it. That's the home run right there. I texted Matt, that's a 20-point play. That wasn't a 3-point play anymore. He knocked a guy out that's going to go get 10, 15, 20 points on us. So that's a 20-point play.
Yeah. Well, Pinson's great. He's an 87% free throw shooter. And he really started that getting to the line and getting us in foul trouble. And you can say that the refs helped or that Auburn maybe was, but he did it. And when you play basketball, like sometimes you have to do that. When you score 1 point in the first 10 and a half minutes, like LSU did, you have to start doing different things. And Pinson was the key to that. I thought Auburn made all the plays. They had to adjust. Bruce played some zone to keep him out of the lane after he was torching Wendell a little bit. I think you saw Wendell and Zepp and their size get exposed just a little, which is going to happen sometimes at their height. That's okay. Anyway, Flanagan, great job. 6 rebounds from Flanagan too, which I think is a good sign that he's feeling pretty good.
A great play from Flanagan that really pissed me off from the announcers. They were talking about Kessler like crazy, and Flanagan hits a 3 and gets the foul for a 4-point play. And instead of like interrupting his color analyst guy, the announcer like lets his color analyst guy finish his thoughts on Kessler and completely misses a play that should have been like, boom, what the atmosphere, basketball, baby. If Dickie V was on the call, he would have let you know. That was a huge moment. Yeah. And I know people are back and forth on Dickie V, but I still enjoy the Lee Corsos and the Dickie V's of the world.
I thought it was true. You're right. It was a missed call by the announcers for sure. But Flanagan,
that's when you wish you were listening to the radio call too, man. I know you can like get the radio call on your phone and then maybe put it on a speaker and then try to time it out. It's always such a thing. And then people are going to talk about what was talked about on TV. So you kind of have to listen to that one. It's irritating. If we ever get a hold of anybody else, I told Rob Blairmore this, RIP, when he came to New York one time, like, you are like a big deal in radio broadcasting now. Like, you guys got to get together as like a union or something and figure out a way to get an app or talk to ESPN or something and get some rights going to say you can pay an extra $5.99 a month or something and get the radio call. I would love that. Like, I would pay an extra, like every game I'd probably pay $5 to get the radio call. Let's make it happen one day.
I've always said that. I remember as a kid, I used to say, you know what makes no sense? Not showing every NCAA tournament game on a channel that everybody has. And then eventually people wised up and actually did it. Shout out Turner Sports. It's 2022 almost. Can we not? It's not that complicated. Figure it out.
You can clearly easily do it. They do it all the time. They used to do it as a gimmick for some of these big football games that you can stream, like a reason for you to stream online is that you can get the radio call on the stream online. And then they do it for some of these smaller games where they can't get like an ESPN crew to be sent there. They just do the radio call, the hometown radio call in there. It's great. Clearly you can do it. I think at times the radio guy, especially during COVID, I think even would just watch it on TV and do their radio call, watching it on TV. Just do that. Give me the radio call. I know it's a long rant when we have so many other players and things to talk about, but I'm very passionate about that.
Where would you go next? I mean, I don't want to be negative. I thought Jalen Williams looked the most uncomfortable I've seen him look in a long time.
He had a really bad pass at one point over Lior's head. There was a lot. You know what I'll talk about next? I want to talk about the players next. I would talk about how wet everything was. That was a big part of the game. I wonder how much of the whole game was super rough and sloppy and high energy. It felt like everybody was going 100 miles an hour the entire time. The refs kept stopping the game over and over and over again to take sweat off the court when people fell over, to clean the ball between foul shots. There was one guy, they kept saying it was because the weather outside's very humid. I texted a friend of mine, Ryan, shout out Ryan. And he said, yeah, it is super humid outside. It's been raining. There's a storm front coming in. I was like, is it hot and humid in the stadium though? And he's like, he couldn't tell from a seat, but you know, if the announcers are talking about it, clearly the refs are concerned about it. I don't know if it was like partly the guys were sweating more than ever before, if the court was actually more humid or not. There was a shot like 5 minutes into the game of Darius Days, I believe, and he was literally dripping sweat. Like I saw 4 or 5 drops of sweat just watching him in that little bitty segment they had focused on him. So if he was sweating that much, I could only like think every time some of those other guys and him would fall on the court, how sweaty it is. I mean, that's part of the humidity. But I also wonder if you gave these guys some towels in between plays, like wipe yourself off. You look like you jumped out of a swimming pool and then ran onto the court.
Well, you made a great point. I mean, I think we knew this was going to be kind of a physical, sloppy game. Maybe that played into it a little bit because they were clearly having people slip. They were having to clean the ball. Jabari was asking for that a couple times at the free throw line. Like, hey, the ball's wet. Like, can we? There was
one play that was really bad. I think it was KD, or no, it was Flanagan. They passed the ball to Flanagan, and Flanagan, it went right through Flanagan's hands and went up in the air, and then Jabari went to grab it, and he slipped with the ball somehow. It was a big turnover off another frantic, like we had turned them over. It was frantic. If we could have just like slowed down right there, it would have been a big moment in the game. Or I keep saying big moments. It felt like this game was a 15-point lead, but man, every moment felt there's so much tension and stress in this game. But it went through Ryan's hands, then through Jabari's hands, and you wonder like, okay, that turnover really feels like a wet ball situation. But there were a lot of other like just high energy, they got ahead of themselves kind of turnovers.
Well, let's talk about the turnovers. That was one of my pregame thoughts, I believe. And I really, if you had told me before this game that Auburn would turn the ball over 21 times, I don't know what our average is, it's probably like 10 or 12. I would say, I doubt we beat that LSU team turning it over 21 times. We did force 17. And maybe the big stat there is we actually won points off turnovers by 1. We scored 17 off theirs. They scored 16 off ours. But still, 21 turnovers is pretty unacceptable, wet ball or not. I thought Auburn was out of control at times. But part of that was just the game and both teams being physical and really getting after it defensively. You text me some stuff I wasn't aware of either, how really top in the country in some defensive metrics LSU was. So
follow on Instagram and you'll get these stats. Me and Matt are always sending stuff back and forth. At this point, I just post them all on Instagram. So I had no idea how good they were at defense either until like the day before when I saw it on the article. And so try to post that stuff on there. I mean, yeah, a lot of this probably came down to how good their defense is. Defense travels. But when we can talk about this now too with the turnovers, I think this is a big part of it. We started the game up 18-1. LSU just bricked a ton of shots. We were playing really good defense. They weren't driving the ball. We were driving the ball. I mean, we're getting down there and scoring. It wasn't perfect. Matt, you were talking about how you think that was going to be one of those great ones you look back on. I think it's good. I think it's big energy. I think it was a lot of fun. But we definitely I feel like a decent portion of that was how bad LSU's offense was. I thought we were playing good defense, not like the kind of defense that would start a game 18-1. But then the big thing coming back is they started driving the ball and we started turning the ball over constantly. We got really frantic. They started going and collecting. We were up. There was another big issue. We were up 7-1 in fouls. They had 7. We had 1. It was great. I was like, man, this is going to really matter down the stretch. By the end of the half, we were the one on the other side. We had 10 or 11 on us, 10 or 11 on us, and they had like 8 or 9. It was really incredible because they just started taking the ball to us. And we just kept fouling. You could say it was on the refs, you could say whatever, but they kept making competent drives, and we kept not making competent drives. Sure, we had a couple drives, but they were some weird floaty stuff. You have to look like you know what you're doing when you get down there. And we kept getting blown by. We couldn't blow by there, guys. We kept turning the ball over, and that's why this game kept getting close, and why a 15-point win against an undefeated LSU team still felt so frustrating.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. First of all, underrated basketball fact: you get fouls when you don't play good defense. When you let people in, when you have this good of a defensive team like Auburn has, Auburn shut off those drives early in the first half, and then they got, I think a few of them got winded. I think the energy level was just so high, and they started getting driven past. And by the way, a lot of teams Auburn's going to play has bigger guards that they're going to have a height advantage. They're going to have a size advantage. Maybe not against KD, but against Zepp and Wendell they are. And I think but the great part is Kessler on the back end, right? He covers a multitude of sins. But look, I was more impressed with LSU's adjusting and forcing. They jumped into our guys to get fouls when it was going that bad. And I hope our players would do the same thing if the roles were reversed. Because sometimes you have to force the action. I thought LSU showed a lot of good stuff. Pinson has been in the league for multiple years. He's played in the SEC. Zepp Jasper hasn't. Wendell Green hasn't. KD came off the bench 1 year at Georgia. So that's a huge, and Jabari hasn't played at this level. I thought LSU has some grown men that responded well to an 18-1 start. And I was really happy with the punchback that Auburn had. Every time LSU got close, they responded.
I think if you're looking for some weaknesses on Auburn right now, you have talked about the size of the guards. You saw what LSU could do with larger guards, just getting in there. Man, you can start off a game losing 18-1 and bring it back to a reasonable game that you really feel like you could, with another shot or two, win the game by just going down there and making competent
drives. I like competent drives.
Yeah. Competent, yeah. And the refs will blow the whistle half the time. Sometimes you wonder, we can talk about the refs later. I thought they were fine. They try to control the game with cleaning stuff off or whatever. If you just go down there and bang the boards, like, sure, you're going to get the call half the time just by going down there. There's body on body. They have to blow some sort of whistle. It's probably going to be on the defense. But there might be an issue with our guys being so small. You said if the roles were reversed, we would do that. But I don't know if you can do that with Zepp and Wendell and KD at times. Even KD goes down there and bangs, but because he's so small, it doesn't always look competent, right? And he doesn't always contort his body in a way to do that. Luckily, Flanagan's back. I think Flanagan is the guy that can do that kind of thing. I don't think he's quite there yet, but Jabari also has issues driving the ball at times. We try to work the ball down to him. We tried to start this game doing that, but we can't seem to get Jabari to do any really physical driving right now. But I mean, you could substitute that with working the ball down to him and backing him up. Walker can do that to times. We're having issues still getting the ball to Walker at times. They were really tentative to start this game to get Walker the ball. There were several plays I saw where the guard had the ball. Walker was in decent position. Instead of throwing it up to him, they just passed it away again. You can say that's because our guys are smaller and we can't seem to do it confidently. Jabari seems to be able to get Walker the ball, but we got to get other guys that can get Walker the ball. So you just wonder, roles reversed, if we're going to be able to go to get those foul calls if we need them.
It's a great question. And I hope we don't have to see it. I hope we're not down 18-1 and that far down. What about rebounding? I thought rebounding, another question I had was, Jabari and Walker are tremendous players, but they're not the most physical. Can they keep really athletic big guys off the glass? Auburn won rebounding 43-37. And I did want to shout out again. I mean, look, you can say they did take some bad shots and they did, LSU's offense wasn't crisp. They turned the ball over a lot too. You still held LSU to 28% shooting. I mean, I just want to, that's a ranked, undefeated team. You held them to 28%. You held them to 20% from three. Auburn was only 30, but you win that battle. We talked about three-point defense. They missed some open shots, but we had a hand in their face. I do have to point this out. I brought up LSU's box score for a reason here. Darius Days, I don't know how long he's been at LSU. He's terrifying. He's a big guy that can hit three. He took 12 threes in this game. He was 3 for 12. That's his thing. He takes deep. He's the guy who hit at the buzzer falling away in front of our bench at the end of the first half. That was frustrating. But great job. And you could tell the coaches had drilled the big guys and everybody hey, get on number 4 when he is outside the three-point line. And when they didn't, the coach, I thought Stephen Pearl was about to have an aneurysm on the sideline one time. So just wanted to give a shout out to the three-point defense and overall the shooting. That you're going to win every night when you hold teams to that low. And Walker deserves a ton of credit for that too, because as much as they drove downhill and got in there and got some baskets, he was turning shots away just left and right.
Yeah, it was great. It was great to watch. Part of my pregame notes was how Jabari would do on Darius Days, and he did a pretty good job.
Yep.
Not perfect, but a good job. Look at the three-point shooting. They bricked a lot of threes to start the game, 20% from three for LSU, but it wasn't much better on the other side for us, 30% from three. I don't know what you give and take away for away games. I don't know if you give away 5-10% almost in shooting. So, we held them to 20% from three. You wonder, if we played them in Baton Rouge, if that goes up to 30% from them, and then we're shooting 30% from three on the other side against a really good defensive team. You wonder if that goes down to 25% in Baton Rouge, I think you're going to look up against LSU, and we did hold them to 55. We did hold them down to really low percentage shots. I think it's probably 50-50. Their offense being bad and our defense being good. I really think we're going to look up at the end of the year, because that was already a thing. I looked at their message boards too and everything, and I think they all knew their offense was a little suspect. And I wonder if at the end of the year, we're going to look at LSU and be like, this is a really good defensive team. They're going to do some good stuff. They're going to end up being maybe 4th, 5th, 6th in the league. And it's going to be all on defense. And people are going to say, this offense is bad. And so we'll see. That's what I predict. They're going to say this offense is bad.
Well, it's a great point. And our guy, who we would love to have on the podcast, John Rothstein, said that as the pregame lead up, like, can LSU score enough on the road to beat a good team, which they hadn't really been tested like that. And the answer was no. But the weird thing is, if you followed LSU the last couple of years, they have been extremely explosive offensively and not played a lick of defense. So I guess we don't give Will Wade credit on this podcast, but they are infinitely better defensively than they have been the last few years. It's just weird that the offense may not be there like it has been, because they have some old, experienced, really good SEC players. And tonight they could not handle the jungle. They couldn't handle Auburn's defense. And I think you're right, though. This will be two good defensive teams, as we go throughout league play.
No credit for Will Wade. Boo. He's a ghoul. He looked like a ghoul on TV every time they went on his face. I just don't like him. He gets zero credit for this win, or not win, but zero credit for anything he's doing over there. I hate him. One thing we didn't really talk about when we talked about Kessler, and you were talking about rebounds, he was one rebound away from a triple-double. He had 11 blocks. I wondered down the stretch. He had 9 blocks and 9 rebounds with like 3 minutes left. Everyone was on triple-double watch. He had a weird strip-type block where the guy was going up and he hit it kind of at waist level, and I was really afraid they were going to count that as like a strip or a steal or something and not a block. Luckily, they called it that. Then he got another block down the stretch that I think a lot of people thought was his 10th block with like a minute left or something. So that's great. There was like a minute, maybe 2 minutes left where all he needed was that one rebound. And oh my God, the tension of hoping that we could miss a shot that he could get. I almost you can't do it, but I almost wished when we were up 15 with 2 minutes left and we knew he was one away from a triple double that he would we could run some sort of play. Jalen Moyes had a really bad play this game where he got stuck at the free throw line. He threw it up against the glass, try to dunk it down. LeBron's done that sometimes. He did it himself in the Tennessee game. Awful play. Really didn't work out. But you were kind of hoping, okay, run something like that, like off the backboard that Walker can go get. Because triple doubles are really in the NBA. I mean, they're very well respected in the NBA. Russell Westbrook had some insane year where he had a ridiculous number of them. That doesn't happen in college basketball. You just don't play enough minutes for that kind of thing. And it's just different. The offenses aren't as good. This year, there's only 8 people in college basketball so far this year have had a triple-double. There's so many teams in college basketball. There's 300 teams or something, right? A lot of these teams on here, there's Portland, Montana, Seattle U. There's a lot of smaller teams that can end up doing these triple doubles. There's a couple, Duke, Wake Forest. That's it. That's had in the bigger leagues that does this triple double. So he was that close to having a really special night. Don't think that that's something that just happens very often, especially not when it's on blocks. If I shrink this list down, it doesn't give me the actual stats on how they got these triple doubles. There's one guy on this list from Western Kentucky who's 7'4", 7'5", that's actually leading the nation in blocks over Kessler. Kessler was third last time I checked, and there was 2 other guys above him. So he probably got it on blocks also, but I bet he was the only other one that got it on blocks.
Third in D1, averaging 3.8 before this game.
Add 11 to that, he might be moving up that list.
My quick math says that that would at least put him at 4.5 or 5 blocks a game.
But the other guy, man, the other guy's averaging 7, right?
I don't know what his number is, but I do want to point out, if you watch this game tonight, that is the most blocks ever in Auburn history. 11 is the most blocks any Auburn player ever had. And so just if you're old enough, Mamadou Njai, Kyle Davis, some really good shot blockers Auburn's had way back. But I hope this Walker Kessler that we've seen the last 5 games or so is sustainable, because if it is, that is unfair in a lot of ways to add to this team. If he can be that much of an elite rim protector and contribute offensively, look out.
Twofold. So I found the stat. He's this guy from Western Kentucky is averaging 5 rebounds a game, and there's a guy from Marshall that's averaging 4.62. So we'll see if he can get over 5, he'll jump over him. The guy's got 65 blocks to Walker's 44. So I don't think it's going to work out. But Walker Kessler setting the record for most blocks in a game. Can we just give him a good job, man? You don't get to see a record broken like that every day. I know we don't have some huge history necessarily in basketball, but man, it's still huge to be able to. It's another reason why you see the tickets are so expensive. We're talking about go see this team while you can. Like you get to see special moments like this. Somebody paid 100, these tickets were going probably like $160 or something, $120 minimum. Well, you just got that. You got that worth out of that. He set a record. You got to say you saw Walker Kessler break the record for most blocks in this game.
And some people wrote about it before this game. This is the most highly anticipated conference opener in Auburn basketball history. When you combine the records, the rankings, don't forget, ranked on ranked matchups in basketball are not common in the SEC, over time. It's just not. It's becoming more common as programs get better. This was a massive game. Over holiday break, there were adults in the student section because they had sold some bleacher seats. They did a great job. I'm so excited. I told you I'm going to the Florida game. So with my dad, if you're going to the Florida game, you listen to the podcast, you want to meet up in Auburn sometime on Saturday or at the game, reach out to us on Instagram. And I would love to.
We're going to figure out something. We're going to figure out something interesting to do for Matt being at the game live. I'm still hoping to go to a game. COVID's throwing a lot of wrench and all that kind of stuff, but we'll figure out something special to do. If we can do like a quick fan segment with people or something, that would be fun. We can quickly go through some of the rest of these players and then do some pregame thoughts. Maybe just I'll throw out the names and you just give me a quick impression on what you thought about their game today. Zep Jasper.
Underwhelming offensively, did his thing defensively like he always does on the ball.
His ratio is not going to look great on this one. 2 turnovers, 2 assists. He was setting some sort of record with 6-1 assist turnover. This is going to bring that way down. I think it's going to keep going down. He's fine. He's playing defense well. That's what we want from him. He can only have so many people handling the ball and shooting on this offense. Right
he missed his 3 shots, but 2 of them were at the end of the shot clock where somebody had to shoot, and he just happened to be the guy. So I'm not holding that against him, but he doesn't have that offensive firepower that Wendell has right now.
We already talked about him for a second, but Jalen Williams.
Bad. Uncomfortable. Our power forwards should be the best in the country. Bruce has said that between Jabari and him. And I thought at times Darius Days and other guys just beat us at that position. Not Jabari. Jabari did his thing, but that's not good. I never freak out about one game things in basketball. If that keeps happening in SEC play, that's really disappointing for me as a big Jalen Williams guy.
Yeah. Dylan Cardwell.
First free throws of the season. How have you not gotten to the free throw line in 12 games, Dylan? I love that Red keeps becoming a thing. He's fine. He's going to do his thing. He's going to play 10 to 15 minutes a game, and he's probably the biggest sufferer of how great Walker Kessler is playing right now. But you know there's going to be a game. I still can't believe Walker hasn't been in foul trouble this whole year where he's had to come out. It's coming. It's going to happen, probably against Kentucky. So Dylan Cardwell, be ready.
It's a testament how well Walker Kessler is that the drop-off from Kessler to Cambridge is really huge, right? Not Cambridge, sorry. Cardwell is a huge – Cardwell. I'm going to get it right. There's a guy, Cool for Coolidge or Cool It Off Coolidge on Reddit that's called me out on that, and he's also sent over some good stuff. He sent over how to say the Kentucky player's name, and I wish I had it pulled up right now. I think it's Shibui. I got to look. I feel bad that I don't have it pulled up right now. That's a good way. I'll send it to you. But it's a huge drop off. I thought he would, he's kind of a memeable guy right now because he's taken over the student body. People love him. But honestly, his development's been a little slower than I thought it was going to be because last year he surprised us with how well he played with a guy that we thought would be a walk-on almost, or a guy we weren't sure if we were going to take. And then he came in and brought a lot of energy and did some cool things. This year, it feels like he's not that much better than he was last year. Like you said, he only saw free throws for the first time tonight. Hopefully he'll keep developing. He's already done more than we thought he would ever do. But
by the way, he still had 2 blocks in 12 minutes. He still provides rim protection. He's going to rebound when he's in there. He's going to battle his butt off defensively. And
maybe it's saying some of our guards though too, that you can tell when Kessler goes out that the other team changes their offense a lot and says, let's start going at the goal a little more. Maybe that's because they finally have a chance when they didn't have a chance at all before, but maybe that's on the guards to slow them down, but it feels like they really pick it up a lot. The last guy I talk about, because we talked about Chris Moore a little bit already, it felt like, but the last guy, Leroy Berman.
Solid. I respect his desire to get up shots, even in big game. He's going to drive awkwardly against somebody, and he got it to go down as a goaltend, I guess. He does his thing. It's great to have him as a 10th guy. Bruce wants to play 10 all the time. And tonight we wouldn't have played 10 without Lior. And him and Chris Moore played about the same amount of minutes. We're kind of tracking that to see how that goes throughout the year. I did want to point out on Chris Moore, I thought his offensive rebounding was tremendous, which is one of the things he brings in addition to the try. He kind of, when the offense was struggling and not making shots, he got us some extra shots, some extra possessions. He's due. He's going to have a game or two where he makes some really big plays offensively off those rebounds.
Here's some pregame thoughts. I'll start with mine here. Can the guards take care of the ball and get to the offense started quickly? Not really.
It's okay.
I don't know if it was like all on the guards, these turnovers or not. I don't think it was. A lot of us just like frantic play. Wendell had a pretty good game. I didn't feel like Zepp had that great of a game. I wouldn't say our offense got started slowly. I was really afraid they would press and we would like end up starting really slow. We did have a couple of clock issues where we had to throw the ball up at the end of the clock. So I don't know. I give it 50-50. It wasn't great. It wasn't as bad as it could have been.
Yeah, I thought Wendell ended up with 5 turnovers, but that's a lot of function of how he had the ball in his hands most of this game. And LSU is going to press you, and they're going to force some turnovers, kind of like Auburn's always going to force some turnovers. I was more disappointed in the ball handling of kind of our wing guys, our 3s and our 4s and our 2s. Jabari just made some horrific passes against the press. He probably hadn't seen a press like that ever. I'm trying to have some grace, but he got away with a couple, and then he had some really bad ones. I thought it was okay. For their first game at this level, which we've had those questions, I thought they did okay.
Yeah, there was a really bad pass from Jabari where Walker was double covered. He threw it right into him on a terrible right. And seems like he gets might be to a point where we could say that he gets a little frazzled at times when it seems like his worst turnovers and things always happen when there's already been a turnover or two. There was a game, I think last game even was like that. We had 3 straight turnovers and Jabari maybe it was 2 of those. I don't know, playing against the kind of guy where I felt good in that kind of moment, he's going to slow it down and keep control. Jabari might be the opposite at this point where it's like, okay, we love Jabari, but he might not be the guy when things are going a little haywire.
Well, and it had to shock him. He was out on a fast break and he just got run down and swiped by a guy. And he's like, that's probably never happened to Jabari Smith in his, life, or at least since middle school or something. So he's got to adjust. He was a big, important piece of breaking that press though. So it was good. Just like he's a zone breaker, just like he's a shot maker, he can break runs. I think having him as a mobile presence is great to break presses and stuff. After tonight, I'm a little nervous to have him as a primary press breaker, but he did okay. Everybody did okay.
Okay. I think he's still learning. I think you take some of these lumps, The next one was, can Jabari Smith slow down Darius Days without getting into foul trouble? I heard he was going to take on Darius Days a lot in this game. I was afraid maybe when you have a guy that's actually that good and athletic, and you see you got Jabari on the other side, he's our star player, that you try to pick up fouls on him. I'm sure that could be a strategy in some of these, but he's just so athletic. He's not collected. He's not been in foul trouble much all year. At some point, I think someone's going to try to take that strategy. Go at Jabari, even if he's getting some blocks and things. If we could get him in foul trouble, that's a huge deal. Maybe there'll be a game where Jabari picks up a tic-tac foul to start the game or 2, and then he's got 2 on, and then they start trying to do that kind of thing. But he did good. It's hard for me sometimes with everybody switching to see if they're really taking on these guys. People switch off of a guy like Jabari all the time. So, any thoughts?
Well, I just think Darius Days, he's a pick and pop 3-point shooter. I mean, that's not his game to really go bang on Jabari Smith. I think that's wise, and I do think you're right. I think people are going to challenge. I think Walker is earning respect now where people may not think that. I think before the season, everybody would have been like, oh, well, let's just go attack Walker and get him in foul trouble early in the game, get him out of there. Well, no one so far has been able to do that. And Jabari, I think, has some of the same things. He's going to have a grind playing against some of these big guys for 18 games in the SEC. And I think it will be really, really good for his development.
I finally pulled it up over here. I think the games are going to go after Kessler. I think it's great that Kessler's gained this reputation. We talked about this before, where players have to gain certain reputation to get certain foul calls or to not get certain foul calls. I think Kessler is setting it up where if he gets a block, it's a block. It's not an automatic whistle, and they're looking to be like, nah, this guy gets these blocks. That's great to see. You hope it doesn't change at any point. I pulled up the guy. It's Keep Cool Coolidge. She said it's Sheebway. I'll send it to you. SHEEB SHEEB-way. Sheebway. He might challenge Kessler, and we'll see how that goes. If he, we saw the guy from UConn push Kessler around.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to take a rare breed of person to push Kessler around, but those games are going to be tough. So
Well,
we'll see what happens.
I'll go the opposite way. If Kessler physically matches up with that guy for 30 minutes, I'm going to do something crazy for the podcast.
Say it now. What are you going to do, Matt?
I don't know. I'll take suggestions because
yes, we'll put it out there, guys, on Instagram or wherever. You let us know on wherever you can find us. What should Matt have to do if Walker Kessler has a good game against Sheboygan? He's called it out. He's going to do something crazy. So
I'll
send
do
me
something
crazy suggestions.
Legal. I prefer legal activities.
But you can send illegal ones, and we'll decide for ourselves if Matt's going to break the law.
But
we're willing to skirt the law, okay?
If he struggles against that guy, oh well. If that's the biggest challenge, I still think we're just playing with. I'm so thrilled with how good Walker Kessler is right now. It's so fun.
Yeah. My last one is, can we dictate our style of play early and rattle LSU in their first away game of the season? We started out with an 18-1. They couldn't hit anything. The crowd was amazing. I think it did rattle them to start the game. We just couldn't quite put our foot on the throat there. And they came back on us. Like I said, I think it's about 50-50. We were playing great defense and the crowd was amazing. And 50%, they were just having a really bad time shooting. So it's 50-50. I would say, yes, we did. They just had a good punch back after our initial, they weathered the storm. And honestly, we played really bad afterwards. To have a 17-point lead and let them come all the way back was bad.
Yeah, I totally agree. By the way, the oldest adage in basketball is a game of runs. There are no teams at this level where you're going to go 18-1 to start, where you are not going to give some of that back. I don't care who it is. I don't care if it's Georgia, as bad as they are. It's just not going to happen. So the great part about that run, though, and getting out that great out of the gate at home is you had that space to not play well for a few minutes, and you're up 9 or you're up 7, and it's fine.
Yeah,
and
we set it up. We set the game up as a constant them having to make plays to try to stay in the game, and that takes a lot of pressure off of us. And so I'm gonna go back and say, yes, we did that. We started off the game strong, dictated it. The game was frantic, and that's how we usually want to play, even though we ended up turning the ball over more. So that's something we need to work off. That's going to be our personality. We can't be the one that turns over the ball more. So now we'll do yours. Who wins the turnover battle? Both teams have shown disruptive defense ability.
Yeah, I figured it would be like this. I definitely didn't think we would turn it over 21 times, though, whether that's because of the wetness or LSU's defense or Auburn just struggling. But so LSU won that. But again, maybe more importantly, Auburn managed to win points off turnovers by 1, so it was kind of a wash ultimately. So that's a good sign.
Yeah, you might change it. I mean, that's the whole point of causing turnovers, right? To score off the turnovers. I mean, sure, to make more possessions too, but so they did well. How do Jabari Smith and Walker Kessler handle bigger, stronger, more athletic opposition?
Beautifully. To win the rebounding battle against that team, to 14-2 blocks. We had 14 blocks. That LSU team had 2. They stood up to the challenge tonight. We'll see about Sheboygan, but for tonight in the SEC opener against an undefeated team that's number 3 in the net rankings, that was a resounding yes.
11 blocks. And what, do you get 2 foul calls on him maybe? Amazing. After some of the years we've seen in amount of fouls, how much is that? 3?
Kessler had 3. Jabari had 2.
Great. Will there be a noticeable difference in officiating? Which team will adapt to the refs quicker?
I thought the refs were fine in this game. People always get mad about the ticky-tack things. I thought they were good. I thought that LSU did the veteran thing, and if you've watched basketball, you knew that was going to happen when they couldn't hit a shot, and they did. I thought Auburn eventually adjusted pretty well to it outside of that Pinson run in the second half. And even then, Bruce made some adjustments. I thought Auburn did really well. And if you're going to play this style, you just know, and from watching the last few years, some games, there's going to be a lot of foul calls. And as long as it's the style that we want, and there's not many teams that can out physical and out scrap us. And LSU's one on that list. They can do that. But it was great to see. I thought both teams played their styles well, and I thought the refs let that happen. It was a good game.
I was cool with the refs overall. Also, maybe that's easy to say when you win the game. If we lost the game, we change our opinions on what we think about the refs or whatever. But they kept people under control. It's very frustrating. when you see a game, like I don't think they took over the game or anything. There's times where you say the refs take over the game. It just feels like it's all about the refs in a certain game, or whatever. Clearly, they're going to call the fouls when you go make a competent drive. We said that like 100 times now, but it's really frustrating when your team doesn't do that. When clearly the game has changed, they're calling basically everything if you drive the ball, which I didn't feel like that was necessarily what happened. I feel like we were fouling. In fact, it was the other way to start the game, where I even texted Matt, like, is this a strategy when we drive the ball for them just to foul? Because they were making some really bad fouls. It was very clear, like not a ref just blowing because they were going up against it or whatever. But it's very frustrating when the other team is going down there and getting 2 points off free throws over and over and over again, and our guys just aren't trying. They're not doing it. They're shooting long threes, or they're just not getting the ball going. Just put your head down and drive the ball. Like, they are blowing the whistle. Go do it. They already gained like 8 points on us by doing that. We need to start doing that, and we just don't do it.
Totally agree. So anything else on this game?
Before we go into around the SEC here, talking about different people, we got to talk about the COVID factor. We crossed our fingers, crossed our hands, crossed our legs, prayed to whatever God you're into that COVID wouldn't like cancel this game. So many cancellations. I wish we had like a statistic on how many canceled games there's been. So our big COVID casualty was Devin Cambridge. He had COVID. Luckily, I don't know what our regulations are. It's very, 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 very frustrating that NCAA has not made a ruling on how you should do testing. You can agree or disagree on what we need to be doing, if we shouldn't be testing at all for asymptomatic vaccine people, whatever you want to say. But at the end of the day, you need to make a regulation in NCAA, or at least by conference, because otherwise it's just a race to the bottom on who's going to like be morally okay with like having a breakout or saying whatever because they want to win a game. And so we'll see what they do in Kentucky right now as everyone boosted and they're not testing anyone unless they're symptomatic. That's fine. You can agree with that or disagree with that, but you can't have them doing that and then other teams doing PCRs for every game. And then it gets to the Sweet 16 and John Calipari's check before every game is putting his hand on his player's forehead to see if he thinks they have a fever or not, while you have a different team on the other side having 3 players out because they actually used a real test. So someone needs to come in and do this kind of thing. We've all seen how contagious Omicron is. What is it like? We had to watch out for a situation where Devin Cambridge is out this game, then Walker Kessler's out next game, then Jabari's out next game. We keep having one player at a time. At some point, someone's going to figure out the strategy is get all your players with Omicron right now, get your game postponed instead of forfeited, and then you get all your guys ready for the entire time. Because that would be the worst case scenario, is that you have 1 player out every game or 2 players out every game. I'm watching the Tennessee-Bama game right now. Tennessee's up by 2 points, like kind of early in the second, but they're missing their 2 best players in Fulkerson and Chandler. I think Chandler's their second best player. I don't know. But they're having to deal with that. 2 players out right now. Alabama, I don't even know if Alabama tests at all. Like, I have no idea. So they could have COVID on the other side. You never know. We have to have these regulations. It's very frustrating.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous that we cannot have uniform. I honestly thought that it was. I mean, we did this last year. How is this not a thing? How are we not? That blows my mind. I will push back a little bit. When you have a team of 11 guys, it's easy to say it's going to get postponed. When are you going to play it? There's one gap in every SEC team's schedule for the whole year. There's not all these opportunities to replay these games.
I don't know if they're going to do forfeits or postponements, but they've changed all these conferences as an incentive to get vaccinated. Said if you have an outbreak on your team because your team's unvaccinated or whatever, you're forfeiting that game. Now, so many games are getting canceled because of outbreaks, the breakthrough cases of Omicron, everything. They've changed the rules. I can't tell you for sure what the rules are now or what their plans are with postponements or all that, but I know they're not making people forfeit anymore based off of these games. So you got to make regulations. It's very frustrating. It's been like this with NCAA for probably a decade now, that they don't want to rule on anything. They don't want people to challenge their power, what power they have left, and like their strategy is just to not make rulings. It's like almost like a states' right thing. If I don't want to get into the controversial thing or whatever. So it's frustrating. It's a race to the bottom. Some teams are allowed to get away with things, and some teams aren't. Will Wade and LSU are still over there doing nothing, waiting for this ability to collapse, while we had to deal with all the consequences for the last 5 years of a guy paying players to leave the team.
I don't care. We beat their butts. He's never won in Auburn Arena.
The ghoul, the cheater, the mobster, Will Wade, can't stand him. He's everything wrong with college basketball. I don't want to hear little comment threads about people like doubting Bruce Pearl's morals on nothing but a lie about barbecue.
It's ridiculous. And I think you're right. There will be postponed cancellations, whatever.
Who's all postponed right now? Are you looking at the list right now?
Yeah, I've got
South
it up.
Carolina.
I've got it up. Auburn, and by the way, Auburn is fully vaccinated. So I mean, I don't know about booster, but again, I think
I don't have a solution. I can't tell you a solution right now. I can just tell you we have to have these people get paid millions and millions of dollars to direct these millions and millions of dollar revenue sports. You have to make the hard decisions. Stop like saying, "Oh, just leave it wherever," because you don't want to be a leader and you don't want to like make decisions. Make some decisions, even if I disagree with them. That's what you get paid to do. Stop hiding behind whatever you're hiding behind.
well, I mean, so if we look around the SEC, I believe tonight was the first night of games. So South Carolina and South Carolina State was postponed. The big one, Florida and Ole Miss, their SEC opener was postponed. Again, like you said, I think we'll see that from time to time. I do just want to point out A&M beat Central Arkansas by a lot. I don't care. Gardner-Webb went into Athens and beat Georgia by 17 points. Georgia's now 5-8, but they did beat Memphis, as we'll keep pointing out.
How is Memphis like? It kind of goes back to Alabama, I think. So we'll talk about the Alabama game that's happening right now. But Georgia can beat Memphis, who Memphis beats Alabama, and you're like, how? Because Georgia is absolutely terrible. They lose Gardner-Webb 77-60 at home. Like, come on.
Kentucky,
they'll get up for our game, though. I bet our game will be tough.
Oh yeah,
so
for sure they will. It's a rivalry. They will. Kentucky killed Missouri. Not
Missouri's
too surprising.
At home. On the SEC preview, but they've been absolutely awful this year.
Yeah. So Kentucky gets off to a good start in Rupp. Mississippi State, we talked about Arkansas being a dangerous team with their front end of their conference schedule. Well, they lost by 13 at Mississippi State. I think that is we're gonna see a lot of that this year. It is not easy to get any road win. So when you get them, you celebrate them. And the key, to me, huge part of Auburn winning tonight is just defending home court. Get as many home wins as you can, and then try to steal as many away games as you can. So that's great. The only game going on right now, the only one left tonight, is Tennessee and Alabama. You mentioned the two Tennessee players out. Tennessee's up 2 with less than 12 minutes to go in Tuscaloosa. Those look like two pretty good. I've been kind of keeping an eye on that game. Tennessee's a really solid team defensively, as per usual with Rick Barnes. I am rooting for Tennessee, especially down 2 players, to go beat Alabama.
That'd be great. I'm hoping you just can't. Alabama is a mystery right now if they're really good or really bad or what they are. If Tennessee can beat them down 2 players, I think we can settle the argument that they upset Gonzaga and Houston. They did. Like, they're not a good team that hangs with them that happened to get upset. It'll be the other way around, which would be great. We talk about home field or home court. The tickets for the LSU Auburn game were like minimum 120 or something like that. People know it's special. The Jungle is amazing. They're getting a lot of love nationally on comment sections, from Twitter, from reporters, from the ESPN guys that are there. It's great that's become a thing. There was a stat that for seasons that fans were in the stands, so you got to take out 2020, which I think is legitimate. It takes out our worst season, which is a thing, but I think it's legitimate to count stadiums when they had fans, because what's the point of home court advantage if you don't have fans? And we've only lost 4 games in the last 5 years or last 3 years or something like that. They showed it was Texas A&M at home twice, which we talked about in the SEC preview. That's why we were back and forth on what year Texas A&M, because they did it twice. So luckily we don't play them at home at all this year, I don't think. But then you look at Alabama in this ranked matchup against number 14 Tennessee and number 19 Alabama. There was tickets for $20, and how different is that? 120 versus 20. I know Alabama Stadium's larger, but man, it should be way more than that for a great ranked matchup like that.
So. Well, and I don't buy that argument, they have more capacity. Well, you know what? Tuscaloosa is a bigger city than Auburn, and it's closer to Birmingham, and there's way more of a population there. So look, we know who the real basketball program is in the state, and the real I think that they've captured the fan base. You can say that's because Alabama is so dominant in football or whatever, but it's not comparable. If you watch this game on TV, it's just not the same as the Jungle and what Auburn has at home.
Do you know what the deal is with Alabama fans in basketball wearing construction hats? They've been doing that for years now, I feel like, and they're always wearing those. I don't know what the reference is.
I have no idea.
Their student section too. You got to give it up to whoever designed our student section. Yep. Duke has one of the best environments in college basketball. It's also a smaller stadium, but on TV, if you're like a guy that likes like fans and students, I was the president of my pep club in high school, and I was just really into this kind of like idea of like organized stuff like that. Duke has one of the best because you put the camera on the students, which is a big deal, which is not a thing a lot of places do. Florida's really stupid. They have a good student section behind them, so you don't see the fan. You just see like the pom poms kind of on the edge of your screen. So we have the students on there. That's one thing. Duke does that too, and then you put them right on the court. You don't back them up with a bunch of chairs, different things in front of them. Alabama's got their student section, but they have like it's like pretty far back. It feels like it's like away from the game. And then I just look at their stadium too. Not to keep harping on Alabama, Tennessee forever. They have a whole section in this humongous stadium that's all media, all spaced out in the corner. It is not a good stadium. So Auburn Arena, shout out. I'm sorry it's so hard to get tickets, but they designed it super well, and it's a very fierce environment. We love watching it on TV.
Well, and we'll just reinforce it if you didn't get to listen to our 3-hour SEC preview.
Worth every minute.
Go listen to it. But
it's still relevant. I'm afraid people are not going to go back now because there's such a difference between this game and the last game on like how we feel about the team. But we didn't really go through it like that. We didn't talk about it that much about Auburn versus this game or whatever. We talked a lot of storylines for every team. So you might want to go back and listen to it just to get excited for these rest of these games. It won't matter if we won or lost this game. It's still going to be relevant.
Yeah. Well, I just want to reinforce what we talked about with Michael Floyd of the Jungle, vice president of the Jungle. They have organized. They're promoting people to go to Tuscaloosa when Auburn plays there, and because tickets are way cheaper. Now, students get in for free at Auburn Arena, right? But they also don't get a guaranteed ticket. They have to wait in line. So if you want to go see Auburn play, go to Athens, go to Tuscaloosa, go to Knoxville, go to these places.
I'm looking at it right now. I've never really had to think about it too hard. It's so ugly. It's not.
Have you ever been there?
Stadium. No.
It's not good. It's not good. It'll make you really appreciate, Auburn messes a lot of things up in general, but the arena was brilliant for Auburn's context and for what Auburn needed.
Go get a ticket now too, because I've already seen since the Jungle put that up that we were trying to take over the Coliseum. The tickets were like $50, I think, when he said that on the podcast. Which, listen to the podcast, you get scoops. But it was like $50, and now I think it's up to maybe like high 60s or something. So you might say, oh, no, now it's high 60s. Well, it's going to be 80s next. So go ahead and go get them.
Georgia is still like 20 or $25 on StubHub. Tennessee is still starting at like 35 or 40. Those are great opportunities.
Huge game at Tennessee game. Then you could say you were there when we clinched, or say you were there when we had our decisive game, or say you were there when Devin Cambridge dunks on Justin Powell, and that'll be worth $100.
Let's look at, just looking ahead, try to get some context. Again, Auburn's 12-1, 1-0 in the SEC, probably going to be top 10. Auburn, and I think most teams, a couple teams play, but Auburn's off this weekend for New Year's and everything. They get their first SEC road trip at South Carolina on Tuesday evening in Columbia. That's been a, tough team historically. They're not supposed to be as good this year. But, weird things happen on the road, and it'll be fun to see how this team does there. And then it's the Florida game back at home a week from Saturday on January 8th, and then it's the Alabama game on the road. So every game is going to be big in this league. That's why we're so excited for this podcast. We're going to recap every game. The storylines are endless, and I think Auburn's going to be in this race, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
I have nothing more to say about this game, really, but I'm just so excited about this team and about SEC play and coming. I'm just buzzing off of this game right now. I'm drinking more Gosling's rum, unofficial sponsor, but I hate for it to end because I'm enjoying this game so much, but I have nothing else to say. So enjoy the rest of these SEC games. Hope that nothing else gets canceled or anything. We'll be back on Saturday to talk more basketball.
No, we won't. We'll be back on Tuesday.
Oh, Tuesday. I'm sorry. Oh, now that's disappointing. No, I've waited so long.
I hate to burst your bubble, but yeah, we do not play this weekend. So have a good New Year's. Everybody stay safe. Have fun. And hopefully 2022, it's kind of weird. This is, obviously the last game of this year, and the Auburn men's basketball. We
haven't lost in regulation in 2021, or at least this part of the season, 2021.
It's true. And, we're really bummed if and when we have to cover a loss on this podcast, but maybe we will eventually. But we'll be ready.
I don't, it could be a coincidence. I'm just saying, every time we do a podcast, we don't lose in regulation. So.
What did Lee Corso used to say? I say nothing. Anyway, War Eagle Jackson, 1-0. Let's go.
Yeah. Woo, woo, woo. Breaking news. Breaking news. We've come back onto the podcast after an hour of talking Auburn basketball because we have major breaking news. Matt, hit them with it.
So somebody earned some money for Auburn tonight. They went back. They probably found a partial rebound that didn't count. Walker Kessler now earned a triple-double, the 9th one this year in college basketball, as Jackson pointed out. It has happened. Auburn has a triple-double with blocks, rebounds, and points from Walker Kessler in his SEC debut.
Man, we should have looked up, we took this break in the middle of it. We should have looked up when's the last time another Auburn player had a triple-double. Surely someone on Twitter or anybody is on there saying that right now. But congratulations, Walker Kessler. What an amazing achievement, especially from those first couple podcasts where he talked about we weren't sure if he was really the 5-star freak that we thought he was. But man, partially it's probably him getting comfortable. Partially it's probably Bruce Pearl working the ball to him. I saw a great comment online today that somebody, an opposing fan, was like, I hate Bruce Pearl, but the man is a basketball savant. He's just good. And I love that. Jay Phillips talked about that with Bruce too, that he's like, I feel biased, but he's just that good. I think he's figured out a way to make Walker a statement guy in this. He's too much of a freak not to. And Walker's really showing out, man. Suck it, UNC fans. I'll say it 1,000 times. Like, he came over. I think he should come to Auburn originally. I think there was some weird stuff that happened where he committed on that, like, official and everybody was pointing towards Auburn. Man, this is great. I love it. We haven't had a guy like this in since I can remember.
No, never. We've never had this guy in my lifetime. I mean, maybe if he plays like this, no. I found the number, by the way. Shout out to Auburn. They have these incredible statistical game notes for each game. I went into the LSU pregame PDF. It's like 30 pages. The last triple-double, this is going to make my friend Josh Sells very happy. The last triple-double by an Auburn player was Kenny Gabriel against Bethune-Cookman back in 2012.
Oh, that's not as long ago than I thought.
24 points, 13 rebounds, 10 blocks.
10 blocks for that. Okay.
So
I remember hearing that guy's name. I'm sure I watched some games of him, but
yeah,
that's the kind of stuff you got. It's shocking to see only 9 have happened this year, and that it is that rare because you end up having like weird ones like that. Like it's Bethune-Cookman. It ends up being like a weird night where somebody does that. So to see like that's how rare it is, and the fact that he did that against a top 25 undefeated LSU team. Matt had this. They find these funny things to stack on top of stats so they could say that they're the only player that have done this or whatever. What's the stat, man?
The stat is Walker Kessler is the first player in 25 years of college basketball to have a triple-double against a team that had a 10-0 record or better, like an undefeated team like LSU was tonight. So
there you go. I don't know how many opportunities people have had to do that necessarily, but it happened. We did it. Walker Kessler. Another round of applause for our boy.
So all your concerns about getting that 10th rebound were for naught. It happened anyway.
People are going to listen to that podcast, and I'm going to post it on Instagram, the part of the YouTube clip to remind people that there'll be a breaking news segment at the end of the YouTube or the end of the podcast.
Yeah, I'll add it in the description too. Anyway, we just wanted to come back on and share that with you guys. Exciting, like exclamation point, statistically at least. I know it doesn't mean anything, but it's still we'll remember this probably as like a Walker Kessler triple-double game and a huge win against an undefeated team to start SEC play. So very cool.
War damn Walker Kessler.